Welcome to CityBiz. Hey, we've got the 2-month version for you, October and November, all rolled into one. We're recording this the day before Thanksgiving. You're probably seeing it right after Thanksgiving, so hope you had a good one. And I'm Melinda Arndt, your host on CityBiz. We're here with Michael Halley, Councilman Michael Halley, 10-year plus Councilman Michael Halley, who really has all the latest news for us about city haps that pass through the city council, and that is quite a few different areas of our fair city. So as we head into December, and we will have one more City Biz to round out the year, that'll be coming up in a few weeks after the last city council meeting. Let's turn it over to Michael. We first want to talk about a very top of the mind topic, the city COVID policy update, which is pretty aligned with the state policy. But Michael, what do you say?
Well, as everyone should be aware, if you pay attention to the news, we are seeing surges of COVID cases, not just in Iowa, not just in the Midwest, but all over the country. And in response, even before the governor made her ruling, the council was considering, and the city was considering, changing our policy similar to what it was earlier this year. So we have reverted back to the same policy that we had in spring, which is City Hall will remain closed to the public for a period of time. So what we're just waiting to see is the case numbers start to drop off again. So there are several ways you can pay your utility bill. You can drop it off in the Dropbox in the alley next to City Hall. You can pay it online. You can call in to City Hall and pay it over the phone. So there are other offices in City Hall, planning and zoning is in there, but there are ways, no contact ways that we can continue to process building permits and that kind of thing. So business is still moving forward. We just don't want to expose the City Hall staff to people, if not, if we can avoid it, because if it were to become contagious in City Hall, the city could have to shut down certain offices. There just aren't that many personnel. We have 3 water department employees up the front desk, 1 planning and zoning, full-time planning and zoning, 1 city engineer, 1 city administrator. There's no backup if they were all to become, well, even if 1 caught it, they would all have to quarantine. So that would be harder for the city citizens than not being allowed in City Hall. So we went with the erring on the side of caution. We're just going to allow them to stay isolated. And then we added a new thing. This is new, that all city meetings at City Hall, masks are required. So we were all wearing our masks the entire time at Monday's council meeting. There was a committee meeting beforehand. So anytime we're in City Hall, we wear our masks. So one other place that masks are required, and this is also new, this wasn't the case earlier this year, is at the City Rec Center. So the Recreation Center is staying open, but you have to wear a mask the entire time, except for if you're in the pool and or the shower. And I wasn't sure if this was going to work, so I wore my mask. Last week, or it was earlier this week, I was working out, and I didn't die. I'm still here. It was a little bit more effort to catch my breath, but you can still get the air your body needs while engaged in exercise. Interestingly, the governor's mandate exempts exercising and gyms from the mask mandate. So this is a decision that the Park and Rec director and their board has made for themselves. So they aren't mandated by the state to require masks, but they are. So again, I think the city department heads and the city managers just want to protect the employees as much as possible, because when you have more people coming and going without the mask on, then obviously there's a higher chance of somebody passing COVID, a lot of times asymptomatically. So they have no idea they have it. They're not intentionally going around spreading it. It just happens because people just don't know they're sick. So those are the policies as of now, and until at which time we see the case numbers dropping again, probably going to stay that way for a while.
Good to know.
So make sure you get a mask if you don't have one already. I think they're available all over the place at this point.
They are in a variety of, styles, shapes, sizes. Good to have multiples so you can wash one out, have it drying, have one in the car, one in your pocket of your coat, one everywhere.
Yep. One point I want to make though is some people have this misunderstanding that a private business that requires a mask to come in is somehow infringing on their individual rights. That's not the case. If you rent or own private property, you are allowed by law to dictate the terms in which anyone is allowed to enter said property. So if Walmart has a mask mandate and someone comes in, unless they have some sort of exemption from a doctor, just saying, you're treading on my constitutional rights. No, that's not the case. There's no protection from the requirements of private business owners or even renters as to what their standards are. So no shirt, no shoes, no service, no shirt, no shoes, no mask, no service is completely legal.
That's good to clarify that too.
Yep.
These times will pass. We're just, just going through them. And so that's how the city stands on stands, sits, walks. We do have to change to other topics, but we have a lot of topics to cover. There are some housing development incentives going on and that have been talked about for mixed use and for R5 areas. What about that, Michael?
Well, these are two examples of the city, specifically the committee I chair, Economic Development Committee, trying to remove barriers to new development, specifically housing development in the city, by changing the city code. So we've got some perhaps outdated sections of the code that make it difficult to build certain types of homes in certain areas. So what we've decided to do to start is to look at those areas that we feel could use a little boost and where there's interest in developing. So the first was, we talked about this before, the mixed use zone. And there's a map that we have of the current boundaries. And what's interesting is that area is now bigger because a number of property owners who were formerly just on the edge have asked to be in it. And the reason is they own office buildings and they're seeing a decline in demand for office space and an increase in demand for rental space. And they want to be able to, over time, convert those offices into residential rental properties. And what the mixed use zone allows them to do, which they can't currently in the business district, is to have first floor residence. Now, in a business district, say like downtown, it makes sense to prohibit first floor residential because that would change the nature of that district. It wouldn't, right now, you really want a predominantly retail environment in a downtown. Office buildings are okay, but they don't bring people downtown the same ways as shops and restaurants. You don't want residents in a strict business district. The New Chicago area at one point was a little commercial hub in town because the trains would stop there at the depot right along 4th Street. Those trains would stop and load and unload goods, and before, when Amtrak stopped coming in the 70s, passengers as well. So you had this place where there was activity that isn't there anymore. So if the city could wave a magic wand or play like those city building video games where you can just take a building down and put one up magically, we would imagine that area as more mixed use. We would imagine it as less commercial and more a blend of housing, specifically multi-family housing. So not single units, but duplexes, triplexes, apartment buildings, the like, with some commercial. There's a restaurant that's taken over when Bing Man's on. So we want that kind of activity. And Depot Brewery, I hear, is going to get up and running again. but maybe a little less strict business. So that's where the mixed use comes in. So that's moving forward. We'll have another informal meeting, public meeting in January, and then hopefully have a formal code amendment to bring to council in February of next year. R5 is another area of town. It's west and southwest of where Hy-Vee is located. And it's an unusual section of town because it was originally county, and Parsons College built some quickly built, possibly mobile or modular homes for their faculty, I believe, in that area. And so the lots are small and the properties are small. This was in the 60s. And then it was in the 80s that the city annexed that and brought in proper sewer, and city water. And they zoned it this special R5. So R means residence. And we have R1, which is single family, 2, which allows some multifamily, R3 allows more multifamily, R4, and then R5. So it's a very specific area of town with its own nature in terms of these small lot sizes. Small lot sizes typically mean small home sizes as well. And we have a local developer who came to the committee and showed plans for a small home, not a tiny home, but a smaller home, still meets our minimum requirements. But the width of the building didn't meet our minimum width requirement of 24 feet. So committee, we looked at the R5 zone and realized that we could change that a little bit by allowing an attached garage to be considered as part of that 24-foot width. But we made a few other changes where we really matched the code with what's going on out there. So we matched the lot sizes with the actual lot size of that area and basically allowed duplexes on a single lot, triplexes on a lot and a half, and quadplexes, 4 units on 2 lots combined. So it basically makes the code, makes it more flexible for builders and allows more than it currently does. And so that's been passed through committee. Council approved it in essence, and then now the code change will come to council. So probably by February, those changes will be adopted. And we're hoping this private developer will build. You know, we can't make them, but we can incentivize them. So that's how we're starting to try to fill in some of the need for residential. It's easy for the city to change the code. It's not expensive. And if it allows more uses and allows more possibilities while still maintaining the nature of the area, then we're glad to do it. The next step would be, and we talked about some sort of incentivizing, maybe through a cash incentive rather than a tax abatement for new residential buildings. So we're looking at other ways, but starting with changing the code is kind of the first step. And these are 2 examples of that.
Cool. Well, thanks. With any fingers crossed, there will be some construction beginning next spring or summer on some of those projects. Another kind of land use management project is Lamson Woods. That's at the other end of town, the eastern edge of town. Actually, the trail goes through there. What's going on there?
Well, so that was donated to the city in 1978, and the City Park and Rec is the manager of it. What happened was it's a state preserve, so that's overseen by the DNR, and they have to approve anything that happens in it. What happened was when it was adopted in 1978, there was a temporary management plan that was meant to be replaced by a permanent management plan, and it never happened. So since 78, that temporary plan has been in place, and the DNR policy in the 70s was very much no touch. So those temporary plans are very restrictive. They don't let you remove any trees, even if they're invasives. You can't really, your hands are tied in what you can actually do. So the preserve has been kind of left to its own since 78. And what happens when you leave it to its own devices is more invasive species that compete with the natives. and a less healthy, robust woodland. So we've been talking this for years. Stan Plum, who's a citizen whose father was involved with the original preserve getting brought over, brought this to my attention earlier this year. I brought it to our Arbor Committee, and one of the members of the Arbor Committee is Ray Len, who is the DNR District Forester for this area. So he wrote up an 11-page woodland management plan that talks about how to control some of the invasive species, to encourage the next generation of hardwoods. The Arbor Committee would like to add wording where we would be allowed to plant native understory trees. So understory trees are the shorter ones that live under the really big, majestic oaks and big trees. So trees like redbud or some crabapple or something that could potentially serve as wildlife habitat, particularly bird habitat. And we want to add some language about wildlife, which is not our district forester's forte. So we're going to partner up with the NADI committee, which has been kind of revamped this year. And they used to specifically only work on the NADI property, which is completely other side of town, over by Pleasant Lake, west of Pleasant Lake. But they're kind of winding down the improvements over there. They're going to open to the public in spring. Beautifully restored prairie and a path through the woods, and they've cleaned up some of the invasives that were in the woods and made it so you can go down to the water's edge. So it's going to be really, really nice in there and very inviting. But they want to look at other wild areas and conservation projects. And council said, yeah, we'll unleash this group on working on anything. So they want to be a part of Lamson Woods, and they've got members of that committee who are very knowledgeable in the areas that the Arbor Committee is not so much. So the wildlife management, prescribed burns, that kind of thing. So we're teaming up, and hopefully we'll have something to present to the preserve board next year. And if they approve it, then we will finally be allowed to get in and go and start doing some removing of invasive species and actual management. You know, it does include sometimes taking down some trees that are too congested, and that's just what woodland management is. But there are no plans to add any big trails in there. We're going to leave it as just these little deer path trails. So leave it so it's just kind of a little bit of a wild place. We're not trying to overdo it, but we just want to support the natives, the native species.
Well, the part of the city loop trail does go through Lamson Woods, I think.
Yep. Yeah, just along the north side. Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's a little gate off the trail that goes into the woods.
Oh yeah.
And then then just a dirt path. But even right now, if we wanted to clear that path, say a tree fell over it, and we wanted to get in there and clear it, we're really not supposed to. We're really not supposed to touch anything with the current management plan, and that's not good for the woodlands. We need to, even the woodlands, the natives used to clear out the understory with fire, and it's managing woodlands is what makes them just more enjoyable for humans, I guess I could say, but also for some other native species. So yeah, keep an eye. I'll give an update when we're ready to bring that to the preserve board.
All right, we will have that for next spring on our agenda here to talk about. We also have some project updates on some of the, and I believe you're on the Streets and Roads Committee, or
not anymore. I was, yeah, but we are shifting roles. This is just from our city engineer, Melanie Carlson, provides a project update at the second meeting of the month for council. So it happens right before we do CityBiz, so it's always fresh in my mind. But a couple of updates. She said Highway 1 South, which is the widening of the road from Fillmore to Libertyville Road to 3 lanes. So just like Burlington, 2 lanes and a turn lane, adding a 5-foot sidewalk on one side and a 10-foot paved trail on the other, and then a roundabout. The design has been approved by the DOT, and there were 2 designs. One was it included that little road that runs parallel to Highway 1 that goes to Libertyville Savings Bank to allow that to remain open, and one closed it. And we'll get a recommendation from city staff, but I think they're going to recommend keeping it open so that not all the traffic that would go to the bank would have to go through a residential neighborhood to get to the bank. So we'll decide on that, but we can now start with land negotiation where the DOT, actually, not the city, has to widen their right of way a little bit. So I think it's about 7 feet on both sides of the road. So both east and west sides of that area. They need to buy that property at assessed value from the property owners. So the property owners would lose a little bit of their frontage, but they will be compensated. So typically the way we handle this is we hire a company that's what they do. They get assessed values and they work with property owners. And sometimes there's a little negotiation. Some property owners are pretty easygoing about it, and whatever's offered, they just sign it. Others like to negotiate a little bit more. We've been doing these a lot for the sewer project, getting temporary and permanent easements. And if any trees or fences or something that's in someone's property gets disrupted by it, typically they want compensation if they have to rebuild or if they're losing something that's of value to them. So it's a process, but the whole project has been put off for a year because of COVID. So the DOT was expecting a significant drop in road use tax for the year, but it's actually been a lot less than expected. So I guess people still were driving around, throughout this year, and businesses continued as pretty much as it was. So that tax that's generated from gasoline sales, that's where the road use tax comes from, has stayed pretty much where it was projected to be. Not exactly, but pretty much. Still, the DOT threw this off for another year. So I think construction, I think it's 2022 at this point. It might be 2023. I can't remember. But we got to do all this, the land acquisition, the moving of utilities. So like the Alliance utility poles have to be pushed back. There's a lot of stuff that happens before we even start with the roadway. But it's progressing one step at a time. And also the city got some grant money from the DOT to help pay for some cost increases to the project. So we're close to having it fully funded. We're still working on other grant funds.
Wonderful. Well, I noticed that with the arrival of all the holiday decorations in the Central Park, I don't see the tables. Did they get put away for the winter?
Oh, probably. Yeah. So the wooden tables, I guess they must have put them away for the winter. The Central Park table project for the permanent metal tables is moving forward. All 8 tables were paid for and are in storage at the Public Works. So they arrived in boxes. So I'm still fundraising for the brick pavers and then installation costs so we can get them installed in spring. I've got one business, Everybody's Whole Foods, paid $2,500, and that gets them a 12-inch by 12-inch engraved granite block with their name on it. So there are 4 stations. So there are 3 more naming rights available for any business or organization who wants to pay $2,500. So I'm hopeful I can find 3 more who want to have their name attached to this project, and raise the necessary funds, and we can get them installed when the weather warms up in spring.
I was just thinking that'll make it easy to identify if you're going to meet your friends. Hey, I'll meet you at the Everybody's table or at the whatever company.
Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, you can be specific
rather than saying the northeast corner, or you just name the square.
Name the person. There you go. Yeah, I did a little mock-up that shows where the tile will go. It's right in the middle, right in front of the lamp post, facing the sidewalk. So nice prominent location, and we'll choose a color that doesn't that matches but still stands out from the brick. And so I talked to Whitney Monument, and they have granite, probably do an unpolished granite, and then the engraving I believe is usually black lettering, engraved right into it. So if you go on Central Park, almost every bench and every tree has some, it's in someone's memory.
Yeah.
So it's very fitting. Earlier in the project, some people wanted to engrave the bricks themselves. These bricks that we're using, Pine Hall pavers that match all the other bricks downtown, aren't really great for engraving. Not every brick is good for engraving in, depending on like the density and so this is better. It'll look cleaner. That the brick field won't have any names on it, but this one block will. But I want to give a shout out to the Greater Jefferson County Foundation for paying for the tables. Thank you. It made everything so much, such a boost to be able to buy them and have them in stock, ready to go. So now we just need a little bit more money for the brick and the installation costs.
I saw that picture of all the boxes. Now I know it's the tables. Yay.
Yep, that's the tables in there. Yep, they're parts at least.
Cool. Well, one more park. I haven't gone by it as often in the recent weeks because of the cooler weather, but Petra Park, I noticed significant progress was made.
Yes, they have made a lot of progress since we had our last CityBiz. These vertical wooden elements have gone up at both the east and north entrances, and also on the back side, the west side by the little shed. And that looks really striking. And now they just need to put these horizontal elements across the top. And I think those will be done. The planters are done. The sod on the backside looks good. The trees are there. The landscaper had to put in a French drain along the wall that's shared with Isla Restaurant so that any stormwater would go, where it's supposed to go. And now, I think last week I saw they put in a reflective metal kind of mirror with the ballet bar. And I know that was originally part of the design because it is in honor of Petra Stanley, and that was one thing that she enjoyed was ballet. So that's installed. It's getting close. I mean, it's getting really close. Now we are heading into winter, so we'll see what happens.
So what close means it's not yet open to the public?
No, yeah, so it needs to be, so it's still private property. And well, I think it might be owned by the Jefferson County Foundation, but it's not owned by the city. It's not a city park yet. So it needs to be finished and then gifted to the city. And then it'll be open to the public because then it'll be, if it's city owned, it's owned by all of us.
Well, when we have that date, I will go do some pliés at the bar.
Yeah, me too. We can do our first position, second position. I still remember some of it. I did a little ballet. I'm not ashamed to admit it. It was, it wasn't even that long ago. It was, I think about 9 years ago. I thought I wanted to try something new. So I did a couple of years of ballet.
Yeah, well, I've heard a lot of football players take ballet for agility and turning ability and all that. Anyway.
Yep. So yeah, in spring, I think we got to get out and film CityBiz in Petra Park.
Oh yeah.
And we can either start or end with Melinda and I. And, Jason can join us at the bar if he wants to. We can do a little ballet move. I got Jason, I know he's there behind the camera chuckling right now, but why not,
Why not?
Got to try new things.
Well, meanwhile, this is it for our October-November compressed chock full of info version of CityBiz, and we will bring one more version to you before the year ends. When the next city council meeting is December something.
14th. Yeah, it's 14th. And as per usual, we just do one meeting in December. Sometimes we'll make it the third Monday, but this one just happens to be the second, and it's pretty much middle of the month. But we excuse ourselves from having a meeting around Christmas and New Year. So we'll just have the one meeting and enjoy the holiday season and get back at it in January. So yeah, we'll do another CityBiz. We already have a few topics that we want to talk about. So
we do. And meanwhile, by the time you're seeing this, probably the lights will be on in the square. The official lighting ceremony has been done away with this year, canceled this year just because of COVID, and can't have, be all singing carols out there. I mean, as lovely as it always is, but hopefully we'll all do that at home and enjoy the lights and enjoy our downtown. Downtown shopping is still happening. And
Oh, I got to say, you said lights, and I got to say this because for a nerd like me, this is a big deal. My kids laugh at me, but this is the first time, as long as I can remember, that every single light downtown is working. Every single street light. They're all working, and they've all been replaced with the nice bright LEDs. Well, some people don't think that they're so nice if they're shining in your bedroom window, but downtown is better lit than it's ever been in the 27 years I've lived here. So we'd hired Alliant Energy to install those lights, the new ones, and they're in and they're all functioning. It's really quite a sight to see. So I don't know how long it'll last before something glitches, but yeah, we got extremely well lit. The gazebo in Central Park also received some new lights a few months ago. Some people feel like they're a little too bright. They are extremely bright, I will say. They are. It's almost like an alien spacecraft landed on Central Park sometimes at night, but maybe they'll dim a little over time, lose a little bit of their brightness factor. But downtown it's better lit than it's probably ever been right now.
well, we are moving into that season where, because of less daylight, light is celebrated in all the holidays, from Hanukkah to solstice to Christmas to Kwanzaa. All of them have a lot of light element because of less light, daylight. So why not enjoy all the light that we have downtown while we have it? Thanks for that update, Michael. I will be sure to appreciate the lights.
Yeah, it's great.
And with that, may you have light in your heart till we meet again next month.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.